Sometimes the person you think will save you becomes the one who destroys everything you thought you knew about love. Maya's fingers trembled as she traced the acceptance letter to Stanford's engineering program, her heart racing with possibilities she'd never dared imagine. The campus buzzed with autumn energy, leaves crunching beneath hurried footsteps of students rushing between lectures. She'd worked 3 jobs to afford this moment, sleeping on friends' couches and surviving on instant noodles, but every sacrifice felt worth it now. That's when she met David at the campus coffee shop, his charming smile and easy confidence drawing her in like a moth to flame. He was studying business, always talking about his future empire with such conviction that Maya found herself believing in his dreams as much as her own. They'd studied together late into the night, sharing whispered promises about their future over lukewarm coffee and stolen kisses. "We're gonna conquer the world together," he'd whisper against her ear, and Maya believed every word. She saw their life mapped out perfectly: graduation, careers, marriage, and the kind of love that poets wrote about, the kind that lasted forever. Love makes you blind to red flags that are practically screaming in neon lights. The graduation ceremony felt like stepping into a fairy tale, caps flying through the air as Maya clutched her engineering degree with pride. David had proposed the night before with a simple ring he'd saved months to buy, and Maya's heart soared with the promise of their shared future. The California sun seemed brighter that day, painting everything in golden hues of possibility. "I'll take care of you while you job hunt," David promised, his arm wrapped around her waist as they posed for photos with their families. Maya's parents beamed with pride, finally seeing their daughter achieve the American dream they'd sacrificed everything to give her. The engagement ring caught the light, a symbol of hope and commitment that made Maya's chest swell with emotion. They moved into a small apartment together, David confident he'd land his dream job, while Maya sent out application after application. The bills piled up quickly, but Maya didn't mind picking up extra shifts at the local diner. Love meant sacrifice, and she was willing to give everything for their future together. The moment you become someone's financial lifeline is the moment they start taking you for granted. 6 months passed like a blur of rejection letters and mounting bills, David's confidence slowly cracking under the pressure of unemployment. Maya worked double shifts, her engineering degree collecting dust while she served coffee and cleaned tables to keep their lights on. Her hands grew rough from washing dishes, dark circles forming under her eyes from exhaustion, but she pushed through with the determination that had carried her through university. "Don't worry, baby," she'd whispered to David as he scrolled through job postings with increasing frustration. "We're in this together. Your break will come." She'd massage his shoulders after particularly difficult days, pouring her love into every gesture while ignoring the growing distance in his eyes. David spent his days on the couch, his earlier ambition replaced by a bitter resentment that seemed to grow stronger with each passing week. He'd snap at Maya for small things, criticizing her appearance after long shifts or complaining about the cheap food they could afford. The apartment that once felt like their sanctuary became a pressure cooker of unspoken tensions and broken dreams. Maya told herself it was just temporary stress, that love would see them through this rough patch. Success changes people, but it reveals who they were all along. David burst through the apartment door with an energy Maya hadn't seen in months, his face flushed with excitement and possibility. "I got it," he shouted, spinning her around their tiny living room as she squealed with delight. The marketing position at Sterling Industries was everything he dreamed of: prestigious, well-paying, and filled with opportunities for advancement. Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face as she held him close, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with the hope she'd almost forgotten existed. Finally, their sacrifices would pay off. Finally, they could start planning their wedding, maybe even put a down payment on a house. The future she painted in her mind during those long, exhausting shifts suddenly seemed within reach again. "We did it, baby," he murmured against her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "All those months of struggle were worth it. I'm going to make us rich, Maya. I'm going to give you everything you deserve." His hands cupped her face tenderly, thumbs brushing away her tears as he kissed her with the passion that had first captured her heart all those years ago in the campus coffee shop. That night, they made love with a desperation and joy that reminded Maya why she'd fallen for him in the first place. When your soulmate starts working late every night with their attractive boss, trust your gut. It's usually right. 3 months into David's new job, Maya noticed the changes, like hairline cracks in a foundation. He came home later each night, his phone buzzing constantly with messages he'd quickly hide from view. When she asked about his day, his responses grew vague and distant, his eyes avoiding hers as he spoke about projects and meetings that seemed to consume all his time and attention. "Victoria really sees potential in me," David would say, his voice taking on a tone Maya had never heard before, reverent, almost worshipful. Victoria Sterling, the company's CEO, was everything Maya wasn't: polished, powerful, and old money elegant. Maya had seen her photo in business magazines, all sharp cheekbones and predatory grace, the kind of woman who commanded rooms with a single look. Maya tried to push down the growing knot of anxiety in her stomach, telling herself she was being paranoid and insecure. David was finally succeeding, finally becoming the man he'd always dreamed of being. She should be supportive, not suspicious. But late at night, when he'd shower immediately after coming home or take mysterious phone calls on the balcony, Maya felt something precious slipping through her fingers like water. The apartment felt colder somehow, despite David's increased income finally allowing them to pay for proper heating. The words that shatter your world are often delivered with the casual cruelty of discussing the weather. Maya was folding David's laundry when he walked into their bedroom with the expression of a man about to deliver a death sentence. She looked up with a smile, holding up his favorite shirt, ready to ask about his day. But the words died in her throat when she saw his face, cold, distant, like he was looking at a stranger rather than the woman who'd supported him through his darkest moments. "I need to tell you something," David said, his voice eerily calm as he loosened his tie with practiced precision. "Victoria and I, we're seeing each other. It started as networking, but it's become more, much more." The words hit Maya like physical blows, each syllable stealing the air from her lungs as her hands released a shirt she'd been holding. He continued, "For my career to advance, I need to marry her. She can open doors I never dreamed possible. You understand, don't you? This is bigger than us, Maya. This is about my future, my potential." His eyes held no remorse, no recognition of the promises he was breaking or the heart he was shattering into irreparable pieces. Maya stared at him in stunned silence, the engagement ring on her fingers suddenly feeling like a shackle rather than a symbol of love. Nothing reveals character quite like watching someone kick you when you're already down. The tears came that evening like a dam bursting, months of suppressed anxiety and growing distance finally finding their release. Maya sat on their bed, his bed now, she supposed, crying with the kind of raw anguish that seemed to echo from her very soul. Her body shook with each sob, years of love and sacrifice crumbling into dust around her feet. David found her there, his face twisted with irritation rather than compassion. "The rent is due tomorrow," he said flatly, checking his expensive new watch with theatrical impatience. "I won't be paying it. I'm moving in with Victoria this weekend." He delivered these words with the casual cruelty of a landlord evicting a problematic tenant, no acknowledgement of the woman who'd kept him afloat when he had nothing. "But David, I can't afford this place alone," Maya whispered through her tears, her voice breaking on each word. She had been working part-time since his promotion, planning to return to engineering now that their finances were stable. The apartment rent alone would consume her entire salary, leaving nothing for food or utilities. He shrugged, already mentally gone from their life together. "Not my problem anymore, Maya. You're a smart girl. You'll figure it out." With that dismissal, he walked out to pack his clothes, leaving Maya drowning in the wreckage of everything she'd believed about love and loyalty. Sometimes rock bottom becomes the launching pad for the life you were always meant to live. Maya's boss, Sarah, found her crying in the office bathroom 3 days later, her eyes swollen and red from sleepless nights spent calculating impossible budgets. The kindness in Sarah's voice as she offered the Seattle Tech conference assignment felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "It'll be good for you to get away," Sarah said gently, her maternal instincts recognizing the signs of a heart in crisis. The flight to Seattle felt surreal, clouds passing beneath the airplane window like Maya's old life dissolving into mist. She'd never traveled for business before, had barely traveled at all except for the move to California for university. The conference hotel was grander than anywhere she'd ever stayed, all marble lobbies and crystal chandeliers that made her feel small and out of place in her carefully budgeted professional attire. Maya spent the first night in her room ordering room service and crying over bad romantic comedies, her phone silent without David's usual goodnight texts. The Seattle skyline twinkled outside her window like scattered diamonds, beautiful and foreign and full of possibilities she couldn't yet imagine. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe without the weight of someone else's expectations crushing her chest. Tomorrow would bring new faces, new ideas, and maybe the beginning of healing she desperately needed. Sometimes angels arrive in expensive suits, disguised as ordinary strangers in hotel cafes. The hotel cafe buzzed with conference attendees, laptops clicking and coffee cups clinking as Maya sat alone at a corner table, pushing a wilted salad around her plate. She'd managed exactly 3 bites in the past hour, her appetite buried beneath layers of grief and uncertainty. The engineering presentations had been fascinating, but her mind kept drifting to the empty apartment waiting for her in California and the impossible rent payment looming like a thundercloud. "Excuse me, are you all right?" The voice was warm and concerned, causing Maya to look up into the kindest brown eyes she'd ever seen. The man standing beside her table was tall and distinguished, probably in his early 30s, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly salary. But his expression held genuine concern, not the polished networking smile she'd grown accustomed to seeing at the conference. "I'm fine," Maya lied automatically, quickly wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Her voice cracked on the words, betraying the emotional chaos swirling beneath her composed exterior. "May I sit?" he asked gently, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "I'm Alexander, and you look like someone who could use a friend right now." His smile was warm and undemanding, offering comfort without expecting anything in return. Against her better judgment, Maya found herself nodding, grateful for any human connection that didn't require her to pretend everything was fine. Healing begins the moment someone listens to your story without trying to fix you. Alexander ordered 2 cups of the cafe's best coffee and settled into his chair with the patience of someone who had nowhere else to be. Maya found herself studying his face. Strong jawline, laugh lines around those compassionate eyes, hands that spoke of confidence without arrogance. He didn't push for details about her tears, instead sharing amusing observations about the conference speakers and the peculiar habits of hotel cafe regulars. The woman in the corner has been having the same phone argument for 3 days, he observed with gentle humor, nodding toward a hurried-looking executive. I'm starting to think it's performance art. His comment coaxed the first genuine laugh Maya had experienced in weeks, the sound surprising her with its rusty unfamiliarity. As her defenses slowly crumbled under his patient kindness, Maya found herself sharing fragments of her story. Not everything. The wounds were too fresh, too humiliating, but enough to explain the sadness he'd recognized from across the cafe. Alexander listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was truly hearing her words rather than waiting for his turn to speak. Love shouldn't require you to lose yourself. The right person will want to build you up, not tear you down. His words settled into her heart like seeds in fertile soil, the first glimmer of hope she'd felt since David's betrayal. Some connections transcend logic, weaving themselves into your soul before your mind can protest. The conference days blurred together in a haze of technical presentations and stolen conversations with Alexander over coffee breaks and evening receptions. Maya discovered he had a brilliant mind for business strategy, could quote classic literature from memory, and possessed a dry wit that consistently caught her off guard. He made her laugh until her sides ached, the sound foreign after months of walking on eggshells around David's moods. You light up when you talk about engineering, Alexander observed as they walked through Pike Place Market on the conference's final evening. Maya had been explaining her university projects with an enthusiasm she'd forgotten she possessed, her hands gesturing animatedly as she described complex algorithms and innovative solutions. The market's vibrant chaos provided the perfect backdrop for their deepening connection. Vendors calling out prices, the scent of fresh flowers mixing with coffee and seafood. I'd forgotten how much I loved it, Maya admitted, pausing to admire a stunning bouquet of sunflowers. David always said it was too technical, too masculine. He preferred when I talked about softer things. The words tasted bitter in her mouth, a recognition of how much of herself she'd buried to accommodate someone else's comfort. Alexander bought the sunflowers without asking, presenting them with a gallant bow that made Maya giggle. Intelligence is beautiful. Never dim your light for anyone. When someone sees your worth after you've forgotten it yourself, falling feels less like falling and more like finally coming home. Their last evening in Seattle stretched into the early morning hours as Maya and Alexander talked on the rooftop terrace, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. Maya felt more herself than she had in years. Smart, funny, worthy of attention and affection. Alexander's admiration wasn't conditional on her dimming her intellect or suppressing her ambitions. He celebrated every aspect of her personality that David found inconvenient. I don't want this to end, Maya whispered as the sky began to lighten with dawn's first hints. They'd moved closer together throughout the night, her head now resting on his shoulder as his fingers traced gentle patterns on her arm. The intimacy felt both thrilling and terrifying, her heart already beginning to heal in ways she hadn't thought possible just days earlier. It doesn't have to, Alexander murmured against her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "I live in San Francisco. We're practically neighbors. If you like, I'd love to take you to dinner when we get home. Real dinner, not conference hotel food." His nervous laugh revealed vulnerability beneath his confident exterior, making Maya's heart flutter with the recognition that this extraordinary man was as affected by their connection as she was. Maya lifted her head to meet his eyes, seeing her own hope and uncertainty reflected in their depths. "I like that very much," she whispered, sealing the promise with their first kiss as the sunrise painted the Seattle skyline in shades of gold and possibility. New love blooms differently when nurtured by anticipation and watered with late-night phone calls. The weeks following Seattle passed in a blur of text messages, phone calls that stretched until dawn, and the delicious anticipation of their upcoming first official date. Alexander proved to be as thoughtful and engaging from a distance as he had been in person, sending Maya flowers on particularly difficult days and remembering small details from their conversations that even her closest friends often forgot. Maya threw herself into job searching with renewed energy. Her conversations with Alexander reminded her of her worth and capabilities. His encouragement helped her negotiate better terms with her current employer, finally securing the engineering position she'd been qualified for all along. The pay increase meant she could afford her apartment without sacrificing meals or utilities, a financial independence that felt like reclaiming her power. "I'm proud of you," Alexander said during one of their nightly calls, his voice warm with genuine admiration. Maya was curled up in bed, her laptop open to apartment listings for smaller places she might rent after her lease expired. The space felt different now without David's presence, less like home, but also less like a prison. She was learning to appreciate the silence, the ability to make decisions without considering someone else's constantly shifting moods. "I'm proud of me too," Maya realized, the words surprising her with their truth. For the first time in years, she was choosing her own path rather than orbiting around someone else's dreams. Sometimes the universe aligns perfectly, offering you exactly what your heart needs when you finally believe you deserve it. Alexander chose a small Italian restaurant in San Francisco's North Beach for their first real date. The kind of intimate place where conversations could unfold over wine and candlelight without distraction. Maya had spent hours choosing her outfit, a midnight blue dress that brought out her eyes and made her feel confident and beautiful. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman she barely recognized, glowing, hopeful, ready for whatever came next. The evening unfolded like something from a romantic movie, conversation flowing as naturally as the wine Alexander ordered to complement their meal. He was an expert storyteller, painting vivid pictures of his travels and business ventures while asking thoughtful questions about Maya's engineering work and future aspirations. She found herself sharing dreams she'd buried for years, goals that seemed impossible when filtered through David's dismissive skepticism. "I want to design sustainable infrastructure," Maya confessed over dessert, her cheeks flushed with wine and vulnerability. "I know it sounds naive." "It sounds brilliant," Alexander interrupted, his eyes bright with excitement. "Vision like that changes the world. Have you considered applying for grants or connecting with organizations that fund innovative development projects?" His enthusiasm was infectious, making Maya's dreams feel achievable rather than foolishly optimistic. Walking along the bay afterward, their hands intertwined as fog rolled in from the Pacific, Maya felt like she was finally living her own life, rather than a supporting role in someone else's story. Some wounds never fully heal. They just wait for the perfect moment to rip open again. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered to Maya's office in an envelope so thick and expensive it practically screamed luxury. Her hands trembled as she recognized David's familiar handwriting, addressing her as his dear friend, the casualness of it making her stomach lurch with remembered pain and fresh anger.
Victoria Sterling and David Mitchell, the Ivy Card announced in elegant script, would be united in matrimony at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Black tie required. Maya stared at the date with growing horror. Just 3 weeks away? Barely enough time to find an appropriate dress if she could even afford one. The reception would be held in the hotel's crystal ballroom with a guest list that read like a who's who of California business elite. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David. "Hope you can make it. Would mean a lot to have you there to celebrate this new chapter." The audacity of his message, asking her to witness his marriage to the woman he loved her for, stole the breath from her lungs. Her colleagues glanced over with concern as she rushed to the bathroom, hyperventilating as months of carefully managed grief came crashing back with overwhelming force. She called Alexander through her tears, barely able to form coherent words as she explained the cruel invitation and her complete inability to face such an event alone and underdressed among people who would know exactly who she was and why she was there. Sometimes your knight in shining armor arrives with a Black American Express card and secrets you never imagined. "I'll go with you," Alexander said without hesitation, his voice calm and sure through the phone. Maya was curled up in her office bathroom stall, tears streaming down her face as she clutched the offensive invitation in her shaking hands. "We'll get you the most beautiful dress Beverly Hills has to offer, and you'll walk into that wedding looking absolutely stunning. You deserve to hold your head high, Maya." "Alexander, I can't afford," Maya began, but he cut her off gently. "Let me do this for you," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "Consider it an investment in seeing that bastard's face when he realizes what he threw away. Besides, I've been wanting an excuse to take you somewhere fancy." His attempt at lightness didn't quite mask the steel underlying his words, a protective anger that made Maya's heart flutter with gratitude and something deeper. That weekend, Alexander took Maya shopping in Union Square, his patience endless as she tried on dress after dress in boutiques she'd only ever walked past. He had impeccable taste, steering her towards a stunning black silk gown that hugged her curves perfectly and made her feel like a movie star. The price tag made Maya gasp, but Alexander simply handed over his credit card with the casual ease of someone for whom money was no object. "You look magnificent," he murmured as Maya emerged from the dressing room for the final fitting, his eyes dark with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. In that moment, wearing a dress that cost more than her monthly rent, Maya felt like she could conquer the world, or at least survive David's wedding with her dignity intact.
Walking into your ex's wedding with a mysterious billionaire on your arm is the kind of revenge novels are written about. The morning of David's wedding, Maya stood on the tarmac at San Francisco International Airport, staring in disbelief at the sleek private jet gleaming in the California sunshine. Alexander appeared beside her, carrying their weekend bags, his smile mysterious as he watched her reaction to the luxury aircraft with Sterling Enterprises emblazoned on its side. "Are you ready?" he asked, offering his arm as the flight crew welcomed them aboard with champagne and warm towels. Maya's mouth fell open at the interior, cream leather seats, polished wood accents, and enough space to host a dinner party at 30,000 feet. This was wealth beyond anything she'd ever imagined, making David's middle management salary seem laughably small in comparison. The hour-long flight to Los Angeles passed in a dream, Maya curled against Alexander's side as they soared above the coastline. "I still can't believe this is real," she whispered, her fingers tracing patterns on his expensive shirt. The Beverly Hills Hotel was draped in white roses and crystal when they arrived, every detail screaming expensive perfection as Maya and Alexander walked through the marble lobby toward the ceremony. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her chin high and her smile serene. Maya felt like she was floating in her designer gown as they joined the crowd of impeccably dressed guests. The ceremony was everything Maya had once dreamed her own wedding would be: elegant, romantic, filled with flowers and soft music that tugged at heartstrings. Victoria looked stunning in her custom Vera Wang gown, every inch the powerful woman who commanded boardrooms and broke hearts with equal efficiency. David stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking every bit the successful businessman he'd always aspired to be. Maya felt Alexander's hand tighten on hers as David's eyes found them in the crowd, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that looked almost like panic. She watched him stumble slightly over his vows, his attention clearly divided between his bride and the woman he'd discarded sitting in the third row, looking absolutely radiant. "Breathe," Alexander whispered against her ear, his voice steadying her as the ceremony concluded and the crowd began moving toward the reception. "You're doing beautifully. Let's go show them what they're missing." The moment when your quiet, mysterious boyfriend casually reveals he owns half of California's tech industry. The crystal ballroom buzzed with conversation as Maya and Alexander made their entrance, her gown catching the light from dozens of chandeliers overhead. Maya could feel eyes tracking their movement across the room, whispers following in their wake as people tried to place the striking couple who commanded attention without saying a word. David approached them during cocktail hour, Victoria glued to his side like a beautiful, possessive accessory. "Maya," he said, his voice artificially bright, "you look amazing, and this must be your date." His eyes assessed Alexander with the calculating gaze of a man sizing up competition he hadn't expected to face. "Alexander Sterling," her companion replied smoothly, extending his hand with the kind of confident grace that spoke of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. Maya felt rather than saw the moment recognition dawned in Victoria's eyes, her face draining of color as she stared at the man whose last name she now shared. "Sterling," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the reception chatter. "You're your boss." Alexander's smile was sharp as a blade. "Your boss and Maya's boyfriend. What a small world we live in." The power dynamics in their little circle shifted so dramatically Maya could practically hear the earth moving beneath their feet. Revenge is a dish best served with champagne, designer gowns, and the shocked faces of people who underestimated you. The rest of the reception passed in a haze of barely concealed chaos as news of Alexander's identity rippled through the crowd. Maya watched with fascination as Victoria's wedding mask began to crack, her desperate attempts to maintain composure while processing the professional nightmare she'd unknowingly walked into. David stood frozen beside his new wife, his face cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine. "How long have you known?" Maya asked Alexander as they swayed together on the dance floor, his arms strong and sure around her waist. The question had been burning in her mind since the moment of revelation, wondering if their entire relationship had been orchestrated for this moment of poetic justice. "About David, since our second phone call," Alexander admitted, his voice low and intimate against her ear. "But Maya, I need you to understand, I was already falling for you before I knew who he was. Learning about his betrayal just made me more determined to show you how you deserve to be treated." His honesty was breathtaking, as was the vulnerability in his eyes as he waited for her reaction. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. "So what happens now?" she whispered, her heart full of hope and possibility. "Now we dance," Alexander murmured, spinning her gracefully as the orchestra played. Across the ballroom, Maya caught David's eye one final time, offering him a smile that was equal parts forgiveness and triumph.
before turning her attention fully to the man who saw her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well and loving better than those who hurt you. 6 months after the wedding that changed everything, Maya stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alexander's, theirs penthouse apartment, watching the San Francisco sunrise paint the bay in shades of gold and possibility. Her engagement ring caught the early light, the stunning emerald-cut diamond a far cry from the modest band David had once offered with empty promises and conditional love. The sustainable infrastructure project that once seemed like an impossible dream was now a reality, funded through the Sterling Foundation and already breaking ground in 3 developing countries. Maya's engineering expertise, combined with Alexander's business acumen and resources, was creating exactly the kind of change she had always envisioned: work that mattered, love that supported rather than diminished, and a future built on mutual respect and shared values. "Good morning, beautiful," Alexander murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she leaned into his warmth. They'd heard through mutual connections that David and Victoria's marriage was already showing cracks, the professional complications of their relationship creating the kind of tension that destroyed partnerships, both personal and business. Maya felt a flicker of pity for her former fiancé, but it was overwhelmed with gratitude for the path that had led her here. Sometimes the worst thing that happened to you turned out to be the best thing that could ever have happened, clearing the way for something infinitely better than you'd ever dared to imagine. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Maya replied, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. "Ready to change the world today?" "With you? Always." And Maya knew with absolute certainty that this time, forever, actually meant forever.
You know what really gets me about Maya's story? It's that moment when she's sitting in that hotel cafe, broken and lost, thinking her life is over. And then this stranger, Alexander, sees her pain and chooses kindness. It makes me wonder, have you ever been that stranger for someone? Or has someone been that stranger for you? Because here's the thing, we all have those moments where we're Maya in that cafe. Maybe you're there right now, feeling like someone you love just threw away everything you built together. Maybe you're wondering if you'll ever be enough for someone. But Maya's story reminds us that sometimes our greatest heartbreak is just clearing the path for something beautiful we never could have imagined. You are worthy of a love that builds you up instead of tearing you down. You deserve someone who sees your light and wants to help it shine brighter, not dim it for their comfort. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has a way of bringing justice to those who wronged us, while we're busy becoming the person we were always meant to be. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us bring you more stories like this. Please tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all from around the world. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over yet.